Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2021 horror film Halloween Kills. Now, I know this film has been getting a lot of divided reactions from audiences. Some people love it, some people hate it. I am closer to the middle. I like the film okay. I thought it was a decent slasher. I was disappointed by the film in some ways. I was surprised by the film in other ways. It's one of those movies where I understand the criticisms and I share a lot of them myself. But at the end of the day, I did have fun with it. And that's something that I can't really say for pretty much any other film in this series since H2O. Now, the film was directed by David Gordon Green, and I honestly feel that he did a great job directing this film. I thought that his direction in the 2018 film was really good, but here it's like he took a whole other step up. And in large part, it's due to how, in a lot of different ways, this feels like more of his film, where he's able to put his own personal stamp on things when it comes to his style. Where in the 2018 film, there's a lot of sequences, a lot of shots that are intended to be homages to other directing styles and other sequences from other films in the series. So there aren't as many moments like that in this film. And as a result, he's really able to hone his own skills in a way that I feel is much more his own, and in a lot of ways much more impressive. The way that he moves the camera around here in a multitude of different ways is really impressive. I like his use of techniques. I really think he has a good style. He really does shoot a lot of sequences in ways that really do have a nice mood and atmosphere and feel to them. For instance, the way that he honestly perfectly recreated. I'm sorry, I'm flubbing and fumbling over my words because I'm still to this day pretty speechless in terms of how well he managed to do this. How he perfectly recaptured the look, feel, and vibe of a late 70s horror film during the Hawkins backstory sequences. It's just nothing short of spectacular. I don't know if he shot it on film. I don't know what he did, but I really would love to know because unlike some of these other films that are supposed to be homages and takes on other films or other eras, this actually felt and looked authentic. And that's a huge feather in his cap. And on top of that, the sequences that took place 40 years later were also really well done. The sequences where Michael Myers is going on a rampage. Michael really did feel like a genuine menace here. He had this menacing presence. He felt like an unstoppable force of nature. The direction was every bit as intense as Michael was. When Michael burst out of that burning building and just started wrecking everybody. Michael Myers in this film, in a lot of ways, is the shape out of hell, and the direction really does maintain that intensity. And it seemed like he learned from his own mistakes as well, because there are less scenes where he's focusing on some really boring. And it seems like he really did learn from his own mistakes as well, because there are less sequences where the direction is focusing on really dull moments of characters slowly moving around the house in the dark. There aren't as many moments like that in this movie. There are a few, but it definitely does seem like he decided to uh, not do that as much, and that's a positive. But it's not all great. For instance, during the moment where Michael hulks up and just slays everybody at the end, I didn't like the fact that there was as much slow motion as there was. I think that he could have balanced things out better and had more scenes where things were sped up a little faster, a little bit more intense, a little bit more extreme to match the extreme violence, because the slow-mo at times is a little just too slow. It was moments where it just felt like the energy was kind of let out in that moment, and I feel that it would have been much more satisfying if he had some moments where things were a little bit more sped up. But other than a few instances here and there, I feel that David Gordon Green just did a really great job directing this film, and I would love to see him do a horror film that takes place during the late 70s or early 80s, because as evidenced by the way that he put together and shot and nailed the overall aesthetic of that era, it's something that I really would be curious to see. Now, the screenplay by Scott Teems, Danny McBride, and David Gordon Green, it's teeming with issues, but it's also full of a lot of potential and a lot of genuinely interesting ideas and elements that are brought to this franchise that in some ways are actually somewhat unique, which is a really surprising thing. I know that a lot of people are mixed on the Hawkins backstory. I loved it. Not only was I impressed by the cinematography and the directing in those scenes, I really liked the fact that Hawkins had this backstory. It made you really sympathize with his character more. It made him feel like he has a lot more depth. I like the fact that now, instead of Laurie being the only one that feels the pressure to stop Michael Myers and stop his reign of terror, now you have another guy. Now you have Hawkins, and now he feels that same pressure. I really like that. I like how you bring in Lonnie, and you have sequences with him, and you build a connection with him and Michael. I even liked how they brought Loomis back. I thought it was done in a respectful and admirable fashion. I didn't have a problem with it. It didn't seem to be disrespectful. It didn't seem to be cheap. It made sense that Loomis would be the one to try to deliver the final shot on Michael. And I know people have issues with Hawkins trying to stop him, but to me, that's something that makes sense. You have all these different debates that go on nowadays about the death penalty and how it's wrong and so on. So I could see someone in that moment, especially a cop, do something like that. I really could. And I know there are other people who have problems with Michael Myers and the scenes where the cops are shooting at him and they don't hit him. And I get it, but for me, it's not a problem, because if they did shoot him and pump him full of a ton of lead and he kept coming, it would really kind of take away a lot of the impact and a lot of the uh, spontaneity of the climax. It would make that moment where Michael hulks up and just fucks everyone up less spectacular, less shocking, less badass, because you already saw him take a bunch of bullets early on. So I'm fine with them not hitting him. It doesn't bug me at all. And I'm okay with him just kind of giving up a little bit and going to prison too, because what are we going to do? What else are we going to do with this franchise? It's already established in the last film that he was arrested and he was in the asylum or the institution or the prison for 40 years. It's already been established. That's already how it happened. No matter what they did, it wouldn't be satisfying to some people in terms of how Michael Myers gets captured. So I'm okay with the way that they set things up, and it didn't bother me that much. And I'm fine with Michael being arrested. I mean, Michael was arrested and put in jail at the end of Halloween 5. At least he doesn't have his mask on in this series, in this take on the story. What else were they going to do? And I know for some people that's just proof that they should never have made this trilogy to begin with, and that's fine. I get it. But I'm okay with the way that they set things up. And yes, Hawkins should be dead, but you know what? I don't have a problem with that either, because this is not a realistic franchise by any means, and I like the character. And I like the fact that the writers were like, you know what? We fucked up in the last movie. Uh, we're gonna we're gonna retcon that. We're gonna fix that mistake. I like that. Hawkins was a strong character. He's one of the best things about the 2018 film, and they kill him off in such a lame fashion. Here, he's brought back. He's given more depth as a character, and will he probably die in Halloween Ends? Yeah, most likely. But if it's handled the right way, I can deal with it. Compared to how he died and how he was taken out of action in the 2018 film. So I get why people who aren't a fan of the character and didn't really care for the character that much would have a problem with him getting brought back. But I don't have an issue with it. I like the character. I'm glad they brought him back. I'm glad they pulled some rabbit out of their hat. Does it make sense? No. But pretty much nothing about this movie makes sense. So it's a nonsense, dumb movie. It is. But it's fun. It has some moments where it is legitimately entertaining to watch. And speaking of elements that I thought were interesting and somewhat unique, this film actually tries harder to be a fresh sequel to the 1978 film than the 2018 film did. Because the 2018 film, it's just a soft reboot of H2O. It tries so hard, but at the end, it's just the same overall story as H2O, with only a few different tweaks here and there. This, on the other hand, brings in some new stuff. You bring in Lindsay, you bring in Lonnie, you bring in Tommy Doyle. And Tommy Doyle has been in other films in the series, like Curse of Michael Myers. But here, it's much more compelling. It's much more interesting, despite how things ultimately end. I like the fact that you have these survivors of the massacre in the 1978 film, and I like how they are brought back into the fold. Is it disappointing that most of them die in the end? Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why this film is just okay to me. Is because you bring them in and then you pretty much just waste all of them, which is an incredibly puzzling decision when it comes to the storytelling. But that in itself makes it better than the 2018 film, even as flawed as it is, because it made an effort to do something different. Because there was not another film in this franchise to this point where you had an instance of these original survivors from the first film, in terms of Lindsay and Tommy and all of those other characters that are brought back into the series. And having them just be there for cameos and die is pretty shitty. But having them there to begin with is a step forward in the right direction instead of a step backwards. To me, the best thing that this franchise could have done is start off with these characters, flesh them out more, show us what has happened to these characters after all these years, show the evolution that these characters have gone through. We've already seen a million stories about Laurie and the Strode family. It would have been really fascinating and really interesting and genuinely compelling to me if the first film focused mostly on Tommy Doyle and Lindsay and Lonnie and these other characters from the original film. And then you bring in Laurie later on. And then you have the second film focus a little bit more on Laurie and her family. And then you tie things together and you have the Strode family and these other survivors team up to stop Michael and Halloween Ends once and for all. That to me is a much more satisfying way to set up this trilogy. Here, you have a really good idea of bringing in these original survivors and characters like Brackett, and then they're just there for cameo roles for the most part, and they're there just to be killed by Michael Myers. So it's something that has potential, but ultimately you waste it, you fumble the ball at the end of the game. Now, all of those positives being said, there are some moments of the script that really do suck. It's not full of as many cringe-inducing moments of forced humor as the last film, but there are a few moments like that that admittedly don't work. There are other sequences too where it gets on your nerves. I didn't mind the gay couple at first, but once they started to do the Big John, Little John thing, that got old really fast. And the way that the film tries to be preachy is just insulting and really ridiculous. This is a ridiculous, silly, dumb slasher film at its core. And you have this sequence where it's trying to act like mob justice is immoral and wrong, and people shouldn't be thinking in a mob capacity, because when people are thinking like that, it leads to things where innocent people die. And that's a given, but the way that things are set up here is just ham-fisted and really bad. The stuff with the escaped mental patient is honestly, without a doubt, the worst parts of this film. I don't know what the writers were thinking there. It did not work. In fact, I actually felt that some of the sequences during this moment were laughable, and I was laughing at them, and that's not the intent they were going for. So, yeah, that was a piss poor aspect of this script. And then the ending. I'm actually okay with the fact that Michael rises up and just fucks everyone up. That's not something I expected. So I do give the writers credit for that. But at the same time, the way that they really kind of let things play out is not that great. At least have Tommy survive. Why did he need to die? He never learned anything. This whole stuff with the mob was supposed to show him that this is not the way to go about things. But he never has that light bulb moment because he dies before he really has a chance to learn anything. So that really was not the best choice to kill him off. Save him for the next film. Also, I would have kept Brackett alive too, because the man's been through enough already. He doesn't need to die. But speaking of Brackett, did not need him to have that line of dialogue. Speaking of lines, there were a lot of moments where it's just really too corny and like, okay, I get it. You're trying to like wink at the audience who are fans of Halloween, but this is just really cheesy and just no. The film is dumb enough as it is. We don't need that. So you have those moments and you set things up fine with the mob beating up on Michael Myers, but even that's a little bit rushed because I think they should have lingered on some shots a little bit more. I think you should have shown a few more scenes of Michael getting really fucked up to really hammer home that, oh, like he's done for, and then have him get up, because it felt like it was a little bit too quick when it comes to him rising up. But I like the fact that he rose up. Do I like the fact that he killed everybody? No, but I'm fine with him killing pretty much everybody except for a couple people, because it really does establish this Michael Myers in this universe, in this trilogy, as a genuine force of supernatural nature, as someone who is the embodiment of evil, someone that you cannot keep down, someone that you cannot kill. And I think there was a great way to set that up. This was the moment where everyone in Haddonfield realized that Michael was not human. Where prior, they're like, okay, he killed 4 people way back when, and da-da-da-da-da, and he's on another killing spree. But they still felt like they could kill him. They still felt that like they could win. And at the end of this film, you see that that's not the case. Like, Loomis was right. He is the shape. He is the physical embodiment of evil. He's no longer human. And because of that, you have an instance where you don't really know whether or not your heroes are going to win. And I really do hope that in the final film, they actually do go through with this and they actually let Michael win, because that would be very different and unique for this franchise. I'm not saying kill Laurie or whatever, but actually have him survive, and that would be something very different. And I know some people were like, well, why the heck would he stop killing then? Maybe he's just done. He's done. He's done enough evil, doesn't need to do anymore. Because if they just do another thing where Laurie kills him again, like what is really the point? Maybe they could have someone else kill him. I don't know, but it's just one of those things where we'll see where they go when they get there. But I like the fact that it showed Michael in that way. And yes, you've had moments like that in the franchise before, but not to this capacity. The closest you got was that operating room massacre in part 6, and that was fucking awful because of the shitty editing. And I know some people also have a problem with what happens to Karen. I don't. I did not like this character. I didn't really care for the character in the 2018 film. I hated the character in this movie with her bullshit where she's just trying to be sympathetic and all this other nonsense. Yeah, I did not like this character. It doesn't seem like she learned anything. And that being said, I do agree with the criticisms of this ending. It's rushed. It doesn't make much sense. Why the hell would she be there in the house? Why did she go there to begin with? Well, how does Michael get there? I guess he stole Jason's teleportation powers. And she dies. It's not a dream sequence either, folks. She fucking dies. So if you didn't like that character, I can see why people are pissed. Because she dies in a way that feels very cheap. And it does seem like it's just leading up to the same old shit, because once again, it's Michael versus Laurie. So the script, it's not perfect. It has a ton of flaws. But there are things about it that I liked that I thought were interesting. I liked Tommy Doyle's character. I liked how flawed he was. I liked how things were panning out until the end. It seems like he's going to have a redemptive arc, and then the film just pulls the rug out from underneath you and just gives you the middle finger. So, yeah. I can see why a lot of people don't like the film. And yes, there are characters that are really stupid here and are dumb. But that's par for the course for a lot of slasher films. As long as I'm entertained by it for the most part, it doesn't bother me. And the stupid characters didn't really annoy me too much in this film. What annoyed me more is puzzling writing decisions and people saying evil dies tonight a million times. Now, the performances by the cast, I thought for the most part pretty solid, pretty good. Jamie Lee Curtis, very limited, not a lot of scenes, not a lot of moments. Does fine with what she has here, though. James Jude Courtney is doing for Michael Myers what Kane Hodder did for Jason Voorhees in this new trilogy. He is just absolutely killing it as Michael. Judy Greer, like I said, didn't care for the character. Wasn't really that impressed with the performance. That seemed like she was kind of sleepwalking through a good chunk of it, to be honest. Andi Matichak, she's back as Allison. She's not in it that much. And the scenes that she was in, just eh. Will Patton, I thought he was great. I thought he was excellent in the sequences that he did have. I thought him and Jamie Lee Curtis had really good chemistry in those scenes where they're in the hospital together. Thomas Mann, I also thought did a solid job as the younger version of Frank. And Anthony Michael Hall, I thought he was great. I really liked his take on Tommy Doyle. Yeah, he's kind of an asshole. Yeah, he's kind of foolish and he's hard-headed, but Anthony Michael Hall made the character really resonate with me in a way that the character never did in Curse of Michael Myers when Paul Rudd played that role. Um, Charles Cyphers, it was fun to see him back again as Brackett. Kyle Richards, who played Lindsay in the first film, she was terrific. For an actress who hasn't done a lot in a long time, I thought she was really good. And Nancy Stevens, yeah, I mean, she was in H2O, but and it pretty much ends the same way, but it felt like she put up a little bit more of a fight here. Um, and it was still admittedly nice to see her as well. I liked Robert Longstreet as Lonnie. I also thought he did a good job at with his role, his performance. And I had fun seeing Michael McDonald and Scott MacArthur as Big John and Little John. I thought they had some good chemistry too. And it was nice to see a gay couple in a film like this that was not beating you over the head that they're gay and that they're uh, supposed to be some really special characters, and it was just handling them as just regular characters who just happen to be gay. I liked that. It didn't really do a lot of things where other films would put a spotlight on them and try to prop them up above other people because of the fact that they're gay, and I like the fact that they didn't do that. So it was refreshing to see that, and overall, pretty decent performances. It was also nice to see that kid who played the kid who was babysat in the last movie. It was nice to see him again. I wish he was in the film more because he was really good in Halloween, the 2018 film, and it would have been fun to see his reactions to a lot of things in this one. But overall, pretty solid cast. For the most part, the big selling point is the survivors of the original uh, killings from the 1978 film. And speaking of the original survivors, I know it does seem like a bit much that they are so obsessed about what happened 40 years ago, but PTSD and a lot of other traumatic events tend to stick with a lot of people who experience them. So it really wasn't that much of a problem for me that they were still dwelling on it after all this time. Especially when Michael comes back and starts killing again, because then it just brings back all of those memories and all of that uh, anger in a lot of ways, a lot of that hate, and that leads to a lot of stuff where people are obsessed and just really frustrated, and that's what created the mob, is because they wanted to make sure that it doesn't happen again. It's not something that I really took issue with. I'm fine with other people having a problem with it, but it didn't bother me. I felt it made sense. I mean, there are people who just are involved in an instance where one murder occurs and they still can't let it go. This still isn't something that they're able to move on from fully. Um, from a technical standpoint, there are other elements of this film that are just tremendous. I felt the cinematography was just really top notch. It's a great looking film. Um, and editing wise, I thought it was a well edited film at times. See, that's the thing. It was an inconsistent film when it comes to the editing. And I think that honestly has to do with more of how the ending was originally set up. Because when you get to the point with Karen and she's in the Myers house and she gets stabbed by Michael, the editing in that scene is really choppy and bad. And there are a few other moments where the editing is a little off. But there's other moments where it's really on point. For instance, I thought the way the firefighter massacre was shot was great. I loved that scene. I thought it was visceral. I thought it was exciting. I thought it was a jolt in the arm. I really liked that sequence. I love the use of POV shots. I didn't have a problem with that scene. And I actually thought the scene was well edited. Um, so I want to give Michael Simmons, the cinematographer, and Tim Alverson a lot of credit. They did a good job. The score, I thought, was a step up from the last film. I honestly never had a problem with the score from the 2018 film. I thought it fit the film well, and I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great, but I thought it was good enough. This, though, I really liked. I loved a lot of the different beats here and there. I thought it was a nice return to form for Carpenter. It felt like something you might hear in Prince of Darkness or some of his other films. And overall, I really liked the score, and I love the song by Ghost, uh, um, Hunter's Moon. At least the original version, the version that they released for their single. The one that's at the end credits, I'm not as much of a fan of because I just think it's too overproduced. There's too much going on, and the vocals, in my opinion, are a lot worse. But that being said, I really like that song, at least the single version, and I wish that was in the film, like in an actual sequence. Like, can you imagine like that song, the single version, during the scene where Michael hulks up, like Hulk Hogan, and just fucks everyone up? I think that would have been really epic. And the film, to me, it has better pacing than the 2018 film. It's only 105 minutes, and it feels like it's a much more tighter, much more meaner, much more leaner sequel. And despite it being a lot of filler, when you get to Michael going around killing people, it's done in a way that's really fun and really clever and really well shot and put together. When he killed the lady with the light tube, that was a brutal sequence. When he's stabbing that guy with all those different knives, um, the firefighter massacre, the sequence at the end where he's just fucking everyone up. I liked it. I liked the fact that you saw Michael in Jason Voorhees mode. I know some people have a problem with that because that's not who Michael Myers is. But you know, at this point in this franchise, you gotta go in a different direction. You gotta do something different. And in this instance, I don't think it's that far fetched that Michael would go that route at this point because he's fucking pissed. He's enraged. He's had enough of this shit. He's been scarred and burned. He lost a finger or two, and now he does not want to take anyone's shit. And I like that. I like the fact that Michael was like, no, fuck all of you. I am going to kill you all. I like that attitude. It's different from Michael. It makes him even more intimidating and even more of a badass. So I don't have an issue with that. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's flawed, it's got problems, and there are a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense. Like, why does a fucking lady have an iron? What are you going to do with that? You're going to iron Michael's jumpsuit? But despite all of those problems, I did have fun with it. And no, it's not better than Halloween 4. But I would put it on par with H2O, because H2O has issues too. There are things about it that I like, but there's other things that I don't. And overall, I just thought it was kind of okay. And I feel the same way with this movie. It's okay. And you know what? That's more than I expected from this franchise at this point. That I would get at least an okay film in the series. I know for some people, including my friend, this is worse than the 2018 film. Or this is one of the worst Halloween films. But for me, it's not one of the best, but it's not one of the worst either. And it's still a decent enough time at the movies. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Halloween Kills. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.